So, Christopher, would
Yes.
you like to expand upon the whole issue of the Western canon?
I did not bring a flute.
You've done other things in the past, Chris.
You know, recently my pop was, they named him the ambassador of children, of like literature, of youth reading, and we've been taking it very seriously. So he calls me up and he says, all right, so what do we need to do to fix literacy in America?
That's so Walter D. Myers.
That's how that's a problem. And then he left me a message one time and then called me back in about 3 hours and was like, have you done it yet? And I'm like, I'm working on it. Strangely, and I think that this is one of the keys to this conversation. Since he's been doing this, he's been doing a lot of interviews. He's also gotten a lot of pushback. A lot of pushback, and I think that part of what we're thinking about here, what we're discussing, is the idea of pushback. Because when we discuss the idea of multicultural literature, who here, I mean, we're probably fairly in a room of like-minded individuals, and everyone nods, and we all self-congratulate. It's like, we are very multicultural. We do love literature, don't we? You know, and we do that, and it's good to be in a room of like-minded individuals. But I think that we need to start to really address the fact that there is pushback. Mm-hmm. We need to address the fact that there is this undercurrent, and we need to understand what this undercurrent is from their point of view. Joseph talked about the idea of listening to both sides of the story. We need to ask, what is this pushback? So, you know, in this, we've reached this new age of euphemism and this age of speaking. You know, we speak underneath our speech, right? So we hear phrases like the welfare president, and you know, when you hear women being described, you hear them being described by this outfit or that outfit, and you realize there's a euphemism here. There's an understanding that what we're doing is, in the example of speaking of women, especially women politicians, we're putting these women politicians in their place with that sort of language, and you see this so often, and it's quite disturbing. As authors, we all have opportunity as educators and people who care about reading and literature to change this national conversation, to say, I really do care about America, for example. This is why I want to understand our literary history, why I want to understand us as a literary people. We're one of the only countries in the world that's founded in declaration.
Good point.
We're founded on words. Those words, part of whom were borrowed from the Iroquois Confederacy. But that's important to understand, that our words don't come from nowhere. We share as a heritage both John Locke and the Iroquois Confederacy. We share as a heritage the philosophers of Europe, the philosophers that came afterwards, that, you know, philosophers who were steeped in the Arab world. When you look at, for example, the libraries of a lot of our founding fathers, they had work in Arabic because that was a classical language. You know, we understand that a lot of our great philosophers, you know, are folks that had other names but then have become Latinized. Avicenna, for example, you know, these sorts of folks. Yep. So that's the first thing, this idea of understanding ourselves as a literary people, and as literary people then, the other part of the pushback is people say oftentimes that we should be reading classics. I'm a huge fan of classics. I feel like so often we're put on this dichotomy, this Manichaean dualism, right? Yeah, where it's classics on one side, and I don't know what they imagine is on the other side. Probably several songs by Lil Wayne.
Yeah, right. There you go.
You know, that's what lives on the other side of the classic. So,
yeah, right.
As if it was a choice between Ovid and Amili, you know.
There you go.
But as somebody who studied classics, spent 3 years studying Latin, several other years studying other things, I am fascinated with the idea of the classics themselves as multicultural literature.
Oh, yes.
To understand that Aeneas and Dido got together, and Dido was from Carthage, and Carthage was in North Africa. And to understand ourselves in this sort of, like that we can take in this argument, this euphemistic argument, this doublespeak argument about classics and Americanness. And because we are armed with the tools of literacy, because we are readers, because we really do know our stuff, we can say, I very much believe in classics. I very much believe in Ovid. I very much believe in understanding these things. And I also believe in telling stories. So I understand that Ovid, for example, is the center of so much of our storytelling tradition in the world. You know, you read Metamorphosis, that's pretty much every story you have ever heard, ever. I love Metamorphosis. It's like the biggest sci-fi epic ever. People turn it into birds, etc., etc. And at the same time, we can see the threads of those stories in earlier stories and in our later stories. We understand that Romeo and Juliet comes from Ovid, but we also understand that the problems of those stories are universal. The problems of those stories are echoed in other stories that we have as our job as literary people to bring out. So I think that this idea of this dichotomy between classics and a Millie, you know,
right,
and Lil Wayne, I think that we need to fight against that. And we need to fight against that as artists and as educators to say, okay, let's look at our new classics. Let us look at them in relationship to the old classics. Let us see ourselves on a continuum of literary production as you know, and let us not give up on our legacies, our multiple legacies of literature in this country. That's the gift we have. We have tradition upon tradition that we build upon. It's like our food, you know, it's like our culture. We are our music. We borrow from everywhere and we make new things. Now it's up to us whether or not we choose to give that up, that essential Americanness. If we do, then we lose. And we find ourselves in the strange position of being a country founded on literacy, founded on borrowing, founded on radical collage in many ways, and denying that same history. That's a very, very, very awkward place for us to be. And I think that, you know, in summation of this idea of where our radical collage has left us, you know, I think that it's time to take this conversation to another level, because as Violet mentioned, this is a conversation that's been happening since well before I was born. My dad is old now. He's not here, so I can say that. And you know, we were talking, and he was talking. You know, 1969. He published his first book for children.
Yeah.
And we're still talking in the same terms about inclusivity, about, you know, changing our curriculums to have special units and chapters. And what I'm suggesting is that we need to change our conversation from this inclusivity model, which is about taking a drop and putting it in, to a newer model of understanding that our roots are multicultural, and the fruit of our tree is also is necessarily multicultural. You know, and I think that that's an important kind of thing to notice, is that it's not about inclusivity anymore. It's just about being honest. about telling good stories, telling open stories.
Yeah.
If we can get to that, we can get rid of all of this, hopefully, get rid of some of this pushback, or at least take the pushback that is done in euphemistic terms and let people show their face in whatever way they choose to. If we can get rid of this, to understand that we come from, the roots of the tree are as multicultural as the fruit. Yeah, and I think that's really what the goal is to change this conversation. The conversation is about what is our national character. I mean, and I think that it also has repercussions for every other section of literature. I'm also equally disturbed recently by the depiction of young women in our literature, and that's a problem. Every book about a young woman is about a love triangle, right?
Usually the vampire.
Yeah, right. Now, I mean, but this thing is you know, there's the popular ones. It's always about, like, as if that's what we care about our young women thinking about themselves. All they care about is whether or not some boy likes them. But this is the problem with this model of inclusivity that says, we'll put a woman in here, we'll put a Chinese person in there.
Yeah.
This is the problem. We don't tell the rich, intertwined stories that we need to be working on. To understand that Ovid is as multicultural as Pop's latest book, Larry Yep's latest book, whoever, Anna's latest, whoever you want to talk about. And to understand that that's the standard that we hold ourselves to. So.
Great.
So the feminist press, I think, was established in 1970, and women's studies, I think, the first women's studies department was established in 1973. So I was in college in the 1970s, and I remember hearing discussions about how stupid it was to have women's studies, and that why would anybody want to read about the struggles of females? And I'm sitting there thinking, so you want to read about a grown man chasing a whale, which is any idiot could tell you is not going to end well. And that's more important. Most of us have not chased whales, maybe metaphorically, but I mean literally chasing a whale, it's dumb. Everybody's got the situation of being in a family, whether you like them or not, you got one. And you know, yeah, this kind of pigeonholing, well, you're not thinking of the important things. That's really dumb. Loretta, so what we're going to do is we have another question for Loretta, and then I'm going to ask the panel to comment on each other's discussions. Loretta, over the last 30 years, so many changes have taken place in the world of publishing, and we have some of our publishing friends here with us today. And also, the experience of childhood itself has changed so much in the last 30 years. Would you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I will talk about that a little bit. It's interesting. It's interesting to me to hear the other two speakers speak, and the questions that they brought up. I want to touch on lightly. I was born and raised on the border of the United States and Mexico, but my ancestry goes back in New Mexico for 300 or 400 years. I mean, we can look back at the Spanish and the Native American people who were there before it was even the United States. I can trace my family back. But what's really interesting to me is that when I was growing up, my mother was educated. She was born in Arizona, but educated in Mexico, and my father was educated in California. But neither one of them got past the 6th grade. And so when I was growing up, literature wasn't something that was held up very high for my family. They were kind of just trying to make ends meet. And so for me, it was kind of interesting because the classics were multicultural literature for me. They were a window into a completely different world. And they were something that expanded my mind and my the way I perceived the world. And it was something that I was able to bring back to my family. But what is also interesting is that recently I remembered talking to a publisher about a book I'd written that I was sort of pitching to them. And it was just about how boring summer was, about how one summer when I was a kid growing up in the 60s, it just seemed to last endlessly. It was hot. There was nothing to do. There was no TV to watch. It was all soap operas. And so I had to find things to do myself. And I turned to books. And what's interesting to me today is because of the technology, the way technology has changed, I see my nephews, my sister's grandkids, my nephew's kids, and my family's kids and my friends' kids, and I see that they have such a different experience of childhood. They're not bored all day. Their days are scheduled. From school, they get home, they do this. They seem to have everything allotted. They don't have endless amounts of time in which to discover books. Mm-hmm. And also the social media, the fact that given the opportunity, they're not bored. They've got TV. There's always something to watch on cable, and there's computer games that they can play with all day. And it's I think childhood has changed a lot. But I also think that, I guess as educators and as parents and as just storytellers, it is important to focus on the fact that, we're still human beings. We're going to experience stuff. And getting back to the classics and having seen them as a window into another world, and the fact that my parents didn't value literature at all, the pivotal moment for me as a very small child was that my mother was buying groceries. I must have been in the 1st or 2nd grade, and there was a golden book. And that was something that she would, okay, well, so it costs a few cents, it's in the grocery store, yeah, you can pick that up. And she didn't even know, when I was growing up, she didn't, even though she'd been born in Arizona, she didn't know how to speak English very well. And so reading was challenging for her. And we looked at this golden book. It was a story about how to bake an apple in the fireplace. And this little boy and his grandfather baked this apple in the fireplace. And my mother said, "Oh, I used to do that when I was a kid." And so she said, "We can do that together." Looking at this book together, and somehow I was able to bring literature to my mother, for whom literature and books were very alien. And so, I think that all these questions tie together. The fact is that multicultural literature isn't a distraction. It's, and even if people say it is, and even if they ban the books, and take them out of the classrooms, the world is so big. Technology has made this whole planet such a small world. And you can say that it's a distraction, but the fact of the matter is, we all come from different places. We all come from Latin America, or from Asia, or from, we have African ancestry, and the human spirit is so resilient that we're all going to end up telling our stories.